This is how we see the world at SimCentric. We are changing the principles of reality, and it is big. The advent of virtual reality, general and defense simulation has ushered in a virtual space with possibilities beyond our imagination.
We believe in empowering individuals
to build world-class software products. Our employees are agile, smart, and most importantly, they innovate.
They are the next generation of creative thinkers.
The most positive thing that I have noticed at SimCentric is the way they encourage us to carry out tasks in a different way, to experiment new ideas.
We planted a seed that grew beyond border, and behind these minds are the smiles and the personalities that breed a positive, productive, and fun-loving work culture. SimCentric. Reality is what we make.
Enlightening, transformational, and compassionate.
I am a human being, not a human doing.
විශ්වාසය පහසුව ප්‍රයෝජනවත්.
Hi everyone. Welcome back to the stage. I hope you all are enjoying yourself, and you all were able to listen to some great speeches and followed some great workshops. And we now have a keynote speech from Joe Justice. So this is a keynote speech that we, the organizing team, have been waiting for a long time. I'm sure many of you have dreamt of flying on a Starship. Have you felt like floating around in and out of space, filled with goals and aspirations, which you feel may not be grounded or practical? Now, flying in a Starship is no longer a dream, with SpaceX revolutionizing the space transportation. SpaceX is a classic example of agility at enterprise scale, achieving rapid development, delivery, and continuous improvement. I am awestruck and honored to introduce Joe Justice as a keynote speaker. Joe is the author of the book Scrum Master, published in 7 languages. Joe has worked with Bill Gates, the leadership team at Amazon, and he operated the agility program at Tesla for Elon Musk. Joe founded Wikispeed, which became an example of automotive design and production speed in a fun, egalitarian culture. Joe enjoys collaborating as a board member, writing, teaching, and running companies to make a good future arrive faster. So without further ado, I call upon Joe Justice to the stage. Agile at SpaceX, Starships were made to fly. Joe, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ramesh. Perfect introduction. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much, Scrum Gathering Sri Lanka. It's my honor to collaborate with you. Let's see if I can even share an image. Let's see if I can. Okay. If anyone can give me a thumbs up, I hope you're able to see Agile at SpaceX.
We can see, Joe. We can see.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. I joined Tesla as a full-time employee in 2020. Before that, I had set up the first Agile trainings in Tesla. And before that, I'd consulted to Tesla in 2010 when the White Star project was being created. The White Star project is what later became the Tesla Model S. What I recommended at that time is more modularity, more pieces that could be plugged and unplugged than the Roadster had, the first product. While I was a Tesla employee, I visited SpaceX. And I was a Tesla employee, though, not a SpaceX employee. But what I'd like to share today is maybe a little bit about what I did in Tesla that's similar to what I saw in SpaceX, but much more about what I observed at SpaceX. Here's a first look at how Agile at SpaceX actually works. The purpose of Agile across all of a Musk company is faster releases and more innovation each release. So if I used the word Agile, the only value was pace of innovation. To Elon Musk, pace of innovation is the only thing that matters in the long run. And of course, Agile works perfectly with that. I was hired into Tesla, and you can see here in the United States, Tesla is growing by percent, and all these other companies are dropping by percent. The market is signaling something. The market is signaling it likes pace of innovation. And this financial data is from last year. Tesla is worth less than it was at this point last year. However, most of these other companies are worth less than they were last year as well. Tesla is worth the same amount as the next 10 automotive companies added together. The Musk companies are fantastically successful. And Elon's entire strategy is release faster. Don't wait 3 years for an update. Make small updates or big updates if you can every day. Tesla has a daily hardware change cycle and software change cycle. Well, SpaceX measures a little differently. They're not a publicly traded company. They measure their success as cost per kilogram to low Earth orbit. That is the one overriding metric for SpaceX right now. Cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit. And every employee can see that on their phone, and every employee can see that on monitors that are just above head height, about every 3 meters in every SpaceX building. So everyone sees the current cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit. And as a result, I'll zoom in a little bit here. Here are all the other launch systems available on planet Earth, all the other ones launched by governments. SpaceX is a private company, so much smaller resources, especially in the beginning. SpaceX is already an order of magnitude lower cost to transport a kilogram into low Earth orbit. Now, SpaceX's longer range goal is to spread the light of consciousness out among the stars. That's really motivating. People collaborating with SpaceX, employees of SpaceX, talk about the mission. The mission is making life multiplanetary, spreading the light of consciousness out among the stars. Then people will ask Elon questions like, how are you going to set up a colony on Mars and the moon? What will you do for water, for example? Which solution will you use first to make water? And Elon says, look, until cost per kilogram is low enough, everything else depends on that. Every engineer, every employee is focused on cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit until it's even another order of magnitude lower than it is now. Then SpaceX will introduce other KPIs like efficiency of water generation or rocket fuel creation on the surface of the moon and in tunnels on Mars, etc. So the entire company focuses around one metric that is aligned to the overall goal, the 1,000-year mission, which is spread the light of consciousness out among the stars. Now that measurable KPI, cost per kilogram to low Earth orbit, that will change. The first metric was, can we get a successful launch at all? Like, can we put anything into orbit at any cost? Then other value statements replaced, like eventually, can we land a rocket? And can we reuse that same rocket, which was a first that never happened before? Then can we do that with 2 rockets simultaneously, etc.? Right now, it's cost per kilogram to low Earth orbit, and every employee is focused on it, period, end of sentence. That means if you're on a project that is not attempting to lower the cost per kilogram to low Earth orbit, it will immediately be canceled. And you'll be asked to choose from the available projects that are all related to cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit. It means if you or anyone proposes a project that is attempting to lower cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit, it will be considered or accepted. If you propose any project that's not related to cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit, it will immediately be denied. SpaceX has immediate focus. Projects in Tesla and SpaceX are approved mostly automatically by sets of software. This does mean it's possible and actually likely for there to be more than one version in production at the same time. Here's a YouTube video that you can watch anytime if you screen capture the video, and I'll attempt to share it in the chat later if I have the ability. But even from this screen capture, maybe you can see, if we're making rocket parts, you have a team whose job it is to complete a value-added step to that rocket part. They also are conducting research and development in production. So that rocket part, the same people that are building it are also attempting to design improvements to the process that makes it and to the product itself. There are automated checks, for example, X-ray machines that inspect welds, and the data from the X-ray machines are fed into machine learning algorithms that directly control the welder. So the welder is a self-learning system from its inspection test, its X-ray machine. There are tests before an object enters any team, and there are tests after an object exits every team. It's not a single assembly line in SpaceX or Tesla. There is always at least one other team also producing the same part, and they're making it differently. As long as the same tests pass and the parts integrate together, there's more than one version in production at once. What this means is if either team has a breakthrough innovative idea, they can produce it immediately. They can take their line down, they can stop production, test, they can convert their production line to a prototyping line, basically to test. And as soon as anything they make passes tests, it's used, it's installed on rockets. This gives you massively parallel concurrent development. And in fact, there's not usually 2, there's usually 10 small, cross-functional, co-located, self-organizing teams producing any given important part or piece of software, hardware or software. The interfaces, the way the pieces, how they connect, how they plug together, that needs to stay the same, or these teams provide an adapter. So their new part will be able to plug into the previous parts. In Tesla, we can see how quickly these facilities are built, and then I'll show you some SpaceX facilities. This is Giga Texas in Boca Chica, in Austin, Texas, near the SpaceX Boca Chica facility. This is a picture of the land, this huge area of land, the day the land was purchased. The same day the land was purchased, it was leveled and cleared. Tesla employees rented equipment and hired contractors. So they themselves drove equipment and they hired contractors to clear the land and level the land. And this is the same day the land was bought. 90 days later, you can see the factory fabric is being built on the land. This repeating sequence of modules. Here's the factory fabric being kitted, being built. And this is huge. I mean, there's semi-trailers here. This is absolutely massive. It's actually 4 stories tall. So we're not seeing all 4 stories here. We're seeing 3. Each of these modules is different. The supply chain crunch is real. Getting the same shape of metal, of the same grade of metal, changes over time. We're not able to get the same type of metal, the same shapes of metal, the same alloys of metal consistently over time. So these modular sections are redesigned daily by the people in the same teams that are installing them. So you have mechanical engineers, software engineers, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system experts, welders, and they work in groups to share each other's work. So if you talk to someone who helped build Giga Texas, they're able to talk to you at a deep level of understanding about heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, electrical management, permit application and working with the government, concrete and foundations, contractor management, being a contractor. These people share skills. They started originally with one skill set, but on the job, by working in groups, they learned each other's skills at least to some level, and many of them do more than one role formally. Some of these areas of the factory already have solar panels on top, and some of them have some water treatment, some wastewater treatment. This is 90 days after the land was bought. And if we zoom in, we can see the factory modules are already designing and producing car parts before the building even has walls on it. The modules that have electricity, they have solar already, are already designing and producing car parts, and those cars were sold. Here's an earlier version of the factory fabric. We can see a tent. So this is a shorter version. It's not as tall. We can see a tent. In that tent are people designing and building product. So you have engineers designing product and building product with machines on casters, on wheels, in real time. The factory fabric is built up around them, and the people, the engineers in this tent, take turns building the factory fabric around them. One of the reasons they do that is it's fun. It's fun to work very far outside your domain. Another reason they do that is it's healthy. It's healthy for your body to do a very different kind of work and for your mind to do a very different type of work. And another reason is it builds compassion and avoids hierarchy. There's not the construction class and then the engineers and designers class. They take turns. It keeps the organization feeling level, where people can directly relate to each other because they actually do the same work. They take turns. And the facility builds around the work that's happening already in the tent. If we're in an existing building where we don't clear the land first, what Tesla and SpaceX do is they install supports, pylons or posts through the current building, and then they build the factory fabric on top. We call this modular Z factory fabric, modular Z architecture, where the modules sit on top. And here is modular XY, or flat factory fabric, where you can clear the land first, modular XY. Here are the first 8 sprints at SpaceX. When I say sprint here, I'll use the original meaning from 1994. A sprint meant a product release. An iteration, a sprint, a release, they used to be the same word. Now, a lot of companies want to start Agile, but they're not that Agile yet. So they'll call a sprint 2 weeks, whether it releases or not, or 1 week or 4 weeks. That's okay. The companies are getting started. They're getting in a rhythm. But the intention is a sprint, an iteration, and a release are the same word. That's the wish. So that's how I used that vocabulary when I worked in Tesla and when I visited and collaborated with SpaceX. So the first 8 releases, the first 4 releases took 2 years each. That's how long it took. That's actually pretty fast to design and build and launch a rocket. But of course, SpaceX wanted to go much faster. By adding automation, they were able to get to 1 year iterations, 1 year to design and build a rocket. Each sprint added automation to speed up design, feedback, testing, installation, certification, and more. Now notice they add automation to aid in certification. Automate creating the answer set that's needed to ask for permission to fly the rocket. Automating the test suites that are needed to get certification to allow humans to fly on these rockets. And humans do fly on some of these rockets in Crew Dragon. So there's automation of every essential piece to go from design, including the financial approvals, to rocket launch. This is hardware DevOps. Well, it's basically DevOps for the whole company, but it includes automation of some business decisions. Automated test and deploy. SpaceX puts in the same room design people, builders, testers, and launch professionals. And they actually mix. So many people do more than one of those roles or all those roles, and that reduces time. Small co-located, cross-functional, self-organizing teams. Now SpaceX is on 2-day sprints. Not an entire rocket, but an entire rocket engine can be designed, built, test fired, and installed on the rocket in 2 days. A commercial rocket launch occurs with new hardware and new software every 5 days now. These engines are the highest force per weight products on planet Earth. There is nothing that for its size puts out more power. Nothing. This is it. This is the highest output per weight thing on planet Earth. These things get so hot that they would melt extremely fast. So they have material inside. It's called an ablative coating. It's kind of like sand that's glued in place of many different materials, and it's glued in different patterns, different geometric patterns. And they break off with the flames of the rocket flying out, and they're superheated. They take an enormous amount of heat with them. This is one of the pieces that prevents the rocket engines from melting under their extreme force. And these engines are reusable. They're reused. Most rocket engines aren't. Every single one of these engines is different. They have different tubes, different cooling, different fuel lines, different wiring and electronics, different embedded software on the electronics, different diameter nozzles, different alloys, and different ablative materials, basically glued inside the kind of sand type product. Different materials used, and it's attached in different patterns on every single engine. They're all experiments to be lighter, faster, cheaper, live longer, and reduce the cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit. Every single one. That is the driving metric for these engines, cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit. And they're now on 2-day sprints. One of the reasons SpaceX got from 2-year sprints to 2-day sprints, at least in engines, is because of heavy automation and machine learning in the design process. SpaceX makes their own design software. Heavy automation in the software development process, heavy automation in the testing process, heavy automation even in the logistics that moves these rockets around to test them, these rocket engines around. It starts with a tent building rockets. This is the first building in SpaceX Boca Chica. This is in Texas in the United States. This tent doesn't have air conditioning yet at this point, anything at all. There's a dirt floor. This is the first building. It didn't even have electricity. They ran generators. The first employees arrive, they build this tent, and they take out laptops and they sit on the dirt floor and they start drawing rockets. Those same team members then connect to the internet through their phones and research where they can buy metal, what types of metal they can buy, what price they can buy it. They message each other and other employees to see if they're getting a good deal. They ask machine learning apps like AutoBidder to help automatically check, are they getting a good price? And they themselves then order that metal without asking for any approval. I mean, they'll check with other people. Am I getting a good price? Do you know anything better? But they never wait for an answer if someone can't answer quickly. They order immediately. They order metal. Those same engineers then try to weld it together. Then they hosted something called Contractor Day or Welding Day. They posted on websites. It was a website called Craigslist and other sites in the USA, saying, do you know how to weld? Are you proud of your welds? Are you really good at welding? Show us. Come to SpaceX, Boca Chica, Texas, on this road. They didn't even have an address yet. Come to this road on this day at this time. And there are hilarious pictures on social media of what looks like a big city traffic jam in the middle of the swampy desert, which is Boca Chica, of mostly pickup trucks with welding equipment in the back and generators, packed end to end to end, as wide as the road can be, and on the shoulders of the road, into the middle of the desert, basically. And these people were asked to then weld pieces of the rocket. And that was their interview. If they did a good job, they were asked to come back again tomorrow and be paid. If they did a bad job, they were asked to improve. And the next person's interview was to try to correct that weld or cut out the piece and weld in a new, better piece. And this is how SpaceX hired their welders. Now, they didn't weld alone. Those first employees that were drawing the rockets on the computer, they were interviewing them, but they're also trying to weld with them. And they rotate roles. So everybody would practice welding. So before they had air conditioning, before they had any office, they were already building. There's no master plan. It's simply design and build as fast as you can. And this is the largest rocket on planet Earth. A city building rockets organically evolves based on what is needed at the time. Here's the first tent. No one knew where the second tent would be, or if there would even be a second tent, until the employees said, we need space, and to improve our flow, we'll build another tent. And they placed it here simply for convenience. No one knew they would build windbreaks until the engineers had stacked the rockets tall enough that they worried about a high wind event being a threat. It might push a rocket over. So they built windbreaks. Then there's not a windbreak team that you have to wait on. Another group simply started building a different windbreak. And the place they wanted to put the windbreak was already taken, so they started building it in a new location. If you see, these windbreaks are not the same design. The groups build them independently. They share information, but they don't wait on each other. There's no waiting. Every week, the facility expands to increase speed and quality of what is built there. The factory is the product and is treated to product design, user interface design, artistic beauty, and style is built in as the facility develops. The factory should be beautiful and easy to use. This increases each sprint. So there's not a UX, a user experience review before something is built. Instead, people with user experience skill join different teams as they work on whatever they're doing, and they put their user experience expertise in iteratively every day as these facilities are built, as they evolved. Sprint review. Here are 2 Falcon 9 boosters. They launch and land themselves autonomously. There is no human controlling this. Sprint reviews are automated for speed and repeatability. If we want speed and repeatability, we want automation. That's the idea of DevOps, and that's what SpaceX does. In one sprint, these are the parallel executing work streams. These are the teams that are running independently, the groups that are running independently. Each has their own procurement, mechanical engineering, software engineering, etc., to avoid waiting on central services for maximum speed. So there's not central software development in SpaceX. Each group has their own. That way they don't have to wait on central software development or central mechanical engineering. Each group has their own. Notice Starship is on sprint 27 now. SpaceX makes the largest rocket in the world once a month. The entire rocket, the entire Starship is on a 1-month sprint. And Elon wants to try to automate and automate and automate and increase engineering skill to get it to 1 a week, a new Starship a week. Currently, they're at once a month, and they started it every 2 years. So it's not like they said we're on a 2-week sprint. There's no conversation like that. It's let's go as fast as we can with quality. And that was 2 years in the beginning. And now, for a whole Starship, it's once a month. And the engines are every 2 days. Ted Malaska, Senior Director of Application Software at SpaceX, posted on LinkedIn, someone from my old company interviewed today at SpaceX. They asked, what are the major differences between the two companies? Here was my answer. You know all those product managers, project managers, agile managers, and architects? Yeah, we don't have those. You know all those politics, product increment planning, telephone games, and long debates about nothing? Yeah, we don't have those. In short, we trust engineers and put them in front of the problem. The result is about 10 to 20 times more output per engineer, more ownership, and an increased feeling of meaning as the work is directly related to the outcome. Oh yeah, and we're going to Mars instead of optimizing for taking money from people. So there's that. Elon replied to one of my presentations that I put on YouTube and then was posted on Twitter. My presentation was Agile at Tesla, a technical analysis of the Agile at Tesla for an educated audience of professional Agile coaches and transformation agents, including an early definition of the Musk model and what is now called Joe DX, or digital transformation for the whole company. Elon could have empathized anything I talked about. He could have increased or amplified the automation focus, the focus on self-organizing teams, the focus on not having a manager and using apps instead to answer questions you would have waited on a manager to answer. But that's not what Elon chose to amplify. Of everything I spoke about, what Elon chose to amplify was that it's a flat system. There's no hierarchy. Everyone eats the same food, uses the same restrooms, etc. No executive chef or other ivory tower stuff. There shouldn't be this workers versus management two-class system. Everyone is a worker. And this is absolutely true. Elon physically works in these facilities 12 hours a day. Elon sleeps in a sleeping bag on the factory floor every day. And that's highly motivating. In most companies, the CEO has a beautiful office or a beautiful home. The investors have lavish lifestyles, and you're working hard to make someone else money. In the Musk companies, Elon sleeps on the floor in the factory, has no home, does not own a house, and works 12 hours a day with you. And that creates flatness. So if the owner of the company and the owning group of the company wants speed, it looks like a lack of hierarchy is simply faster because it avoids wait states on approvals. And wait states on approvals are automated away by apps on everyone's phone. I have a present for you to help you navigate your own digital transformation. I'll call that Joe DX, or Joe digitalization across the whole company, hardware, software, management. This is a video chat background summarizing all 12 steps to get to the innovation that Joe DX has. This is a Dropbox link. I don't know if your individual security settings will allow that to work, but I'll put it in the chat, and I think the moderators might be able to help me share that. We'll see.
Yeah.
Moderators, if you can assist me.
Yeah, Joe, you can put it in the comments.
It actually looks like I can only put it in the private chat. The comments I'm not allowed to type.
Yeah,
But
I'll handle it.
Thank you. With that, I'll zoom out to everything we covered, and then I'll zoom out more. That's one step of a 12-step program I developed while working at Tesla and then have refined since then, of how to take a company from wherever it is now to what Agile at a Musk company is doing. In this case, Agile at SpaceX. Starships, the SpaceX rocket, are made to fly. And we're going multiplanetary. You will have the option to live on Mars and live on the moon, and soon even further than that. I've joined a company called StreamIt. They make a product called the Cyberlander. It's an armored luxury mini house that fits in the back of a Cybertruck. My goal is to evolve that tech stack to something that can orbit the Earth and be a prototype microhouse. And this is part of the Agile path, the iterative release path to your own Starship that you can stay in and maybe even live in, and you can spread your light of consciousness out among the stars. Starships were made to fly. With that, I'd like the moderators' help to go through all the comments and questions that may have happened. And thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe, for that insightful speech. I'm sure everyone who's there on the stage learned a lot. Joe, we do have some questions, so you will see the question flashing on the screen, Joe.
I do see it now. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Awesome moderation and great platform. What are the key success factors for such drastic improvements in SpaceX? What were the main challenges faced during the transition? Well, SpaceX is Agile native, right? It started as Agile. So that I wouldn't say there was a transition, but we could say, what are the challenges faced during growth? Now, Twitter is an acquired company that's now being converted to Musk. Now, what's interesting is Twitter was a traditionally Agile company, like a lot of us have worked in, a lot of the Agile professionals here at Scrum Gathering Sri Lanka. We've seen Agile companies that are trying to be like Twitter. And we've seen some really good ones that are like Twitter. They have releases every day with testing. You know, they have great DevOps. They have self-organizing teams, like Twitter does. And Twitter was way too slow and unfocused for Elon Musk. So some of the So what Musk is doing is way beyond what most of us call Agile. I would say it's what Agile is supposed to be, maybe, but it's way beyond what most of us would call Agile, because it's hardware and software and management. So what are the key success factors to make this happen? That level of agility, like beyond what Twitter has, way beyond what Twitter has. What seems to make that come true is the owning group, the board of the company, needs to be able to make a big decision in real time, in at least less than a week. So when Musk acquired Twitter, he asked the board, "What did you get done this week?" And they had no answer. And Musk said, "I've got to fire all of you. I've got to buy the company and fire all of you. Just joining the board will not be enough. You're too slow." So the top management team needs to be agile. They need to make big decisions for the company every day and then work with the teams. They need to join the engineering groups doing the work, writing software, welding, unloading trucks. The same management team needs to do what Elon does and then go into the facilities and work at least 4 hours a day. Elon does it for 12 hours a day, but at least 4 hours a day. So the key enabler is to go this fast is to go as high up in the company as you can if it's hierarchical. So ideally the owning group, and have them be fast at innovating, which is what I'll call agile. And then have them join the teams doing the work. Leaders become model contributors. They become engineers. And you essentially don't have anyone in the company who's not directly working on the product, who's not an engineer. If there's anyone who's making presentations like I just showed you, they should probably be fired in a Musk company, which is what happened with Twitter. Twitter got dramatically reduced. If you weren't actually an engineer for information security, you were let go. And that just happened yesterday. How the change mindset. Oh yeah, how the change mindset adapted to employees' mind to go to align with rapidly evolving process workflows. This is important. When you first join a Musk company, you're given agile DNA. You're told you're given a 4-page document that has 15 rules, and that's your agile DNA. If you try to meet these 15 rules, if you try not to break these 15 rules, you can then do almost anything else that you want. So you're told to self-organize, work as hard as you feel comfortable and safe and healthy doing, work with anyone you want. You can talk to Elon Musk. You can work with Elon if that's what you want to do. You can do anything as long as you don't break these 15 rules. It's like when you join an open space conference, you're given the law of mobility and open space rules, and then you self-organize. So you're given agile DNA, and then you're made free. Well, the Musk companies do that the minute you're hired. Your first 4 hours in the company is your agile DNA. What are your 15 rules? I think they wish it was one rule, but they've got it as short as they can. It's 3.5 pages. It's 15 rules. This agile DNA is important, and the fact that it's at the point of hiring is important, because if you don't like those agile rules, you can choose to go work somewhere else because you've just been hired. Now, Musk right now, I believe, is giving those agile rules to employees in Twitter and saying, do you want to take early retirement, or do you want to stay with these new rules of working, this new agile DNA? This is how teams are launched, relaunched, and how employees are hired and launched in all the Musk companies. It's your agile DNA. It's called the anti-handbook handbook, those 15 rules. If you do the Joe DX course with me, we'll actually go through an anti-handbook handbook retrospective on your current company. Peter Stevens. Oh my goodness. The Peter Stevens. I hope everyone has seen the Inside a Scrum Team graphic that Peter and a very talented team have assembled and are distributing. It's awesome. Thank you, Peter. Based on the poll this morning, 90% of the audience does not see themselves primarily as a doer. Why is it difficult to be like SpaceX? There is your answer. Peter, you're so correct. I love how you have a comment that's guys like a question. I mean, it's that. Now, most companies have some people who don't work. They instead politic and try to protect their interests. They try to attract budget. They might even slow other groups down in order to get budget. Most companies have that. and no one does anything about it. They think, well, I can't do anything about it. That's just the way the company is. That's the owner's child. And so the owner's child, of course, gets to do what they want or whatever. And this is usual all around the world. And it's very corrupt. Elon does something called do your chores. He says everyone's job every day is to find anyone who's breaking those 15 rules, who's not using their Agile DNA, which means you're working all the time on the product, and talk to them and say, why aren't you abiding by these 15 rules, the Agile DNA? And if they don't have a really good answer, your job is to report them to HR so they can be given early retirement or fired every day. Elon calls this doing your chores, and he says you have to do it every day or the company loses the culture and slows down. And he says no one wants to do this. That's why he calls it your chores. It's stuff no one wants to do. Elon says, I don't want to do it, but I have to do it every day. Now, that sounds like low psychological safety. It's actually the opposite. There's extremely high psychological safety in the Musk companies. And the reason why is because bad actors are eliminated. So the people who are in the company, 110,000 people in the case of Tesla, the people who are in the company are abiding by Agile DNA. So you have this incredibly high trust environment. The people who are there are doers, to Peter Stevens' point, because people do their chores. Everyone does their chores. And it makes it the most exciting set of companies I've ever been inside. Every other company feels like it's in slow motion in comparison. Peter Stevens, I love it. You made the point exactly as you usually do.
So, Joe, there's a follow-up question from Peter. Are these 15 rules public?
Yes, they are. I will. I'll put a link to them. It's called the Anti-Handbook Handbook. And I have a link here in the Joe DX class under Step 1 Launch. And I will attempt to share it in the private chat and ask the moderators to share it. It's hosted on a public site called Scribd, SCRIBD. Yeah, here we go. It's coming now. And if you read these rules, what I'd recommend you do is run it as a retrospective. Say, how different is my company from these rules? And most companies are really different from those rules because people haven't done their homework in weeks, months, or decades in some companies. So you have a lot of people who don't work. They call themselves managers or whatever. But if you actually have authority to do your chores, to give people early retirement, this is what creates and maintains the culture. And a leader's job is to do your chores every day so the company can stay flat. It can stay self-organizing. It can stay non-hierarchical, because whoever's in the top, instead of choosing to have a beautiful office and not work, chooses to do their chores every day and then join the mobs doing the work. It's all mob development. For those of you doing mob development, you'd feel very comfortable inside a Musk company. Okay.
Yeah. Joe, we've got a lot of questions, but unfortunately we have 2 more minutes. I guess we can take one more question. I'm sure
absolutely.
everyone
Yes,
is interested. Please. Yeah. So
what I'll say is, in case we run out of time, because we might, in the private chat, if you don't mind, please do reshare it. I've just put my social media contact information, and where, if you want to work with me, you can even take a class from me or my book or whatnot. I'd love to have the book translated in Hindi. I know many Hindi business speakers have excellent English skill, but I think it would be beautiful for people to read in what might have been their first language. So I'd love translation support of the book into actually all Indian languages. What is it, like 4,000? But we could start with Hindi. So questions we don't get to, please tweet them to me, or Facebook or LinkedIn them to me publicly if you don't mind. And I'll attempt to answer all of them. So that brings us to the question. Thank you so much. How do you manage expectations of a high-performing team members, and how do you encourage continue to give the best to their project product? Through test-driven development. So if you have a real-time measure that's calculated of current cost per kilogram into low Earth orbit, current, and it updates several times a second, right? I mean, it doesn't mean there was a change that actually updated. It's recalculated multiple times a second. It's automatic based on the current technology stack, the current CAD that's checked in, the current code that's checked in, the last physical tests. What does the algorithm guess is the current cost per kilogram to low Earth orbit? And it's calculated all the time. So if you check in a new CAD file, or you complete physical test firing of a new piece of a rocket, or you make a welded assembly that's lighter, you immediately see that number on your phone, on everyone's phone, improve. It makes work like a video game where you see the score go up or you hear the good ba-bum sound. And that creates the motivation for people who like to work. Getting a fast feedback work that their work is meaningful and effective is candy. It's wonderful. It makes work like a video game. So the way to encourage is a fast feedback loop. And the way to make a repeatable and quick fast feedback loop is to automate it. So automated testing of the current most important KPI encourages people to work in a meaningful way on that KPI. And that work is typically done in mob. For folks who want to know more about mob, I recommend the Mob Mentality podcast. It's amazing. Thank you so much, Scrum Gathering Sri Lanka. It's my honor and privilege to collaborate with you. I hope we connect on social media. I look forward to any other comment or question, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much for that insightful presentation. I'm sure everyone over here learned a lot. I'm sure most of the guys over here are from a software development background. So to learn from you in terms of a hardware intensive organization along with the software component, I'm sure everyone learned a lot. So thank you very much once again, Joe. I'm sure the guys will be in touch with you and hope to see you soon through another conference. Thank you very much, Joe.